Support for Consider This is provided by the University of Nebraska at Omaha College of Communication, Fine Arts, and Media.
Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
This is the third time in as many mornings. You know where the toilet is, don't you?
Yes, but...
There. You are not a child anymore. You are a young man. I should not be expected to have to clean up after you every day.
It's not my fault.
No, it's never your fault. You people are never to blame. Oh, I'm a bit helpless. I've got special needs. I need special help.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. You better just start stripping your bed and you do it properly or you're going to get smacked, right?
Nebraska takes a step forward to protect its most vulnerable populations. Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, Office of Public Guardian. Joining us to talk more about it are Michelle Chafee, Director, Linda Coloff, Education and Outreach Coordinator, and Lauren Misek, Associate Public Guardian. Thank you all very much for being here. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Michelle, we'll start with you.
Okay.
Office of Public Guardian, what is that?
The Office of Public Guardian is a state entity under the Supreme Court that provides guardianship and conservatorship to individuals who have no one else to take care of them. So it's last resort in regards to no other appropriate individual. So the office acts as specific guardians and conservators, and then we also provide information, support, and education for all private guardians and conservators in the state.
We've been talking about this for quite some time. Tell us a little bit about the legislation that led to this move.
The legislation had been introduced a number of times previously, probably 7, 8 years ago. So this would be the third time that it had been introduced in some format. But in 2014, Senator Colby Koash introduced the legislation to create the Office of Public Guardian, and it passed unanimously within the legislature.
Wow.
So.
Okay, so an important question now, who are you going to be serving? Kind of paint a picture of these folks for us.
Okay. We will, we are the 50th of 50 public guardians in the country. So the benefit of that is we've been able to take a look at, what is the data and what's the population and background of those who are served. And for the most part, it would be people you would think, those who are incapacitated, that are vulnerable adults who no longer have the capacity to make decisions for themselves. And so they need to have someone step in and make those decisions for them. So people who have dementia, people who would have mental health issues that just could not take care of themselves. The developmental disabilities is another population. People who have medical extreme crisis that may not last for a long time, but during the time that they do have it, they aren't able to make medical decisions on their own. So those are roughly the type of population.
Wow, and Linda, a lot of folks she's talking about, right? So just to give us some perspective, what are we talking in terms of staffing for this office?
Our office here in Lincoln we have Michelle, our director, a deputy director. We have a business manager and 2 administrative assistants and myself. And then across the state, we have our 12 associate public guardians in the 12 service areas that goes from border to border. So,
wow.
I believe Lauren's going to tell us something about those.
Well, and she is. All very important roles, right? But education and outreach, what a great opportunity, right? So I'm curious as to where, Linda, you came from.
My background is 40 years in the field of developmental disabilities. I spent time working and training staff in that area, so I feel like I'm doing the things that I enjoyed most from my old job in this one. So
Wow, so I have to ask then, with that kind of a background, you hear that all of this is starting to come to fruition. First of all, where did you hear about it? And then I would imagine you kind of wanted to get there pretty quickly so that you could throw your name in the ring, correct?
Well, I did hear about it, and I wasn't really looking for a job when I found this, so I have grandchildren in Lincoln, and that made the difference about whether I was going to leave my old profession and move into this one, and I'm really happy I'm here.
And we are too. We're just thrilled. So to have that kind of background and experience, and to take someone who had been serving for 40 years in one entity and be able to lure her to our Office of Public Guardian was really such a exciting adventure for us too. So
what a compliment to be lured somewhere, Linda. You don't hear that every day.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. I'm perfectly happy to be lured.
Tell us about your roles and responsibilities in terms of the private guardians and conservators. What are you doing in that area?
Okay, well, to begin with, I've been working with the Court Visitor Program, which we have got up and running from statute. Court visitors are part of older statutes, and we have, as an office, determined that that's a good way to help us live within our statute requirements of serving only those folks who absolutely this is a last resort, and that there are no other people in their lives. So we're using a court visitor program, a volunteer court visitor program, to help screen individuals and provide information to the courts about those people who are potentially incapacitated. So I have been working a lot with the recruitment of those individuals across the state and creating the training curriculums for those individuals. I've also, in terms of private guardianships, we're currently working on the curriculum to train private guardians, and that requirement has been in place for a number of years. The University of Nebraska Extension Program has been primarily working with that, and volunteers supporting seniors also has been doing some of that training, and we will become responsible for that in January. So I've been working with that curriculum, and we will launch, and working with private guardians across the state, which at this point we're thinking there's somewhere between 1,500 and 1,800 new private guardians every year, and there's about 10,000 of them out there over the years. So with that population, we're also looking at creating a network of support for those individuals through modeling best practices through our associate public guardians, and being on site in those 12 service areas for support of those private guardians. So we're working at creating that network that will kind of gather together those people in some fashion, so that we can provide them with the supports that I think they're probably looking for from time to time.
True education and outreach individual, when you can create the segue into the next question, right? Which
Sorry.
is for, no, it was perfect. It's for Lauren, Associate Public Guardian, right? That's been mentioned a few different times now. Mm-hmm. You are one of 12.
Correct.
In the state. So tell us, what is an Associate Public Guardian?
So an Associate Public Guardian is, as you mentioned, we're all across the state. What we will do is we will go into the court system, and after a petition has been filed by an attorney for an individual who potentially is incapacitated, we, through series of procedures and processes, will then take on that individual as their guardian. So each of us will have 40 individuals, and that would be about 484, 85 across the entire state at this point. So with that, we then, as Linda mentioned, will be raising the bar of what it looks like to be a guardian in Nebraska. So specifically examining and what is necessary, what services are necessary for the individual, but also visiting them on a monthly basis, which is required by statute, and helping to educate private guardians as well.
Wow. Okay, and we're going to talk more about numbers and process in just a few minutes, but for right now we'd like to put some faces to names. You are one of 12, as we said, so we're going to put up a graphic for our viewers. And Lauren, if you would be so kind as to introduce us to each one of these folks, so that our viewers from across the state feel a little bit more involved in what we're doing here.
Of course. So first, we have Brad Barrick, who is the Associate Public Guardian of Lincoln, and also he is connected into Seward and Eastern Central Nebraska. He comes from a legal background and also more of a policy background, in which he graduated from UNL and also worked in some policy organizations as well prior. Then we have Irene Britt. She has a very comprehensive experience. She has worked with developmental disabilities, individuals with developmental disabilities, also in terms of service coordination, Medicaid. She has an education background. She's in North Platte and is just full of knowledge. Chris Casey comes from a developmental disabilities background. He also was a teacher. We have a lot of educators on our team. He then was a director in service coordination here in Omaha, and now will be representing Platte County as well as Norfolk and all of central Nebraska. Valerie Franzen, she is also in Lincoln with Brad. She comes from a mental health background, in which she worked in DC and also here in Lincoln and throughout Nebraska, helping with mental health and behavioral health programming. Jordan Harvey is here in Douglas County. She works with myself, who was also in Douglas County. She worked previously in Medicaid and has a master's in counseling and psychology, actually from UNO. Myself, I come from an education background and program direction, and also just recently graduated from Creighton Law School. Michelle Moore is in Kearney, and she has an APS background as well as an education background, so has worked with many vulnerable individuals in central Nebraska and the Kearney area. Stacy Rotherham has extensive experience in terms of dementia and working at a memory care unit with Alzheimer's patients, so comes from a geriatric background and can really assist with understanding that population. Annette Scarlett worked with CPS and also as a service coordinator with developmental disabilities population. She lives in Hastings, but will be supporting Grand Island and also parts of south central Nebraska. Andrew Schill is in Sarpy County. He's here with the eastern half of Nebraska. He has a real focus in elder law and just graduated and became an attorney after graduating from University of Lincoln. And Danielle Shunk also, or we call her Ellie, she also comes from Omaha, and she was an attorney previously after graduating from University of Lincoln and also has an education background. Aaron Wiesen has an extensive background working with developmental disabilities, coming from Goodwill, and also working as a service coordinator with Chris Casey here in Omaha.
Wow, Michelle, before we go, and thank you, Lauren, before we go to the map, okay, that's an impressive
it's just great
group of people. I would imagine as the director, you were involved in every situation. And we were talking before the taping, how many applicants?
Yeah, we had over 900 applicants for our 15 positions when you add the administrative area in Lincoln. So yeah, we had a great pool of applicants and have had just wonderful a breadth of experience across all the populations that I mentioned earlier. So the team itself, even though we have a lot of distance between the different offices, the coordination and the just the cross-pollination of the education and professional experience, it will benefit the office tremendously.
Yeah, I can't even imagine being in the role, you're just hitting the ground running, in January, and then you need to figure out who's going to come on board. Were you surprised at either the number or the caliber of applicants that you had for this?
We were very pleased, very, very pleased. And it was quite the process to go through all those and do all the interviewing all around the different parts of the state. But it's so important. This is a statewide need. We think sometimes about the larger population, and of course, of the 10,000 current people who serve as guardians or conservators across the state, roughly 50% are in the Douglas County eastern area, but there are a lot of need around the rural areas, and then the space and the distance between the people who need to be served is always an issue. So we were really pleased to have the individuals we do who are from those areas and love to serve their population. So
I'm sure the folks in rural Nebraska are happy to hear you not only acknowledge, but that you're going to be addressing them. And Lauren, this would be a good time for us to go to that map so that people can really see where the folks you just described are going to be housed. If you'd walk us through that.
So if we'll start at the western half of Nebraska, that's where Stacy's located, and she goes really pretty much for the entire Panhandle is her area of expertise and her location area. Irene Britt is in North Platte. That's where her office is housed. However, she has pretty much the entire western half of the state, starting from the Panhandle. The third part of the component of the state, which started with Kearney, is Michelle Moore. She's there, and she also shares Hall County with Annette Scarlett, who also takes part of central Nebraska as well. When we look at central North Nebraska, Chris Casey is up through Platte County in Norfolk and takes it all the way up to South Dakota, where he shares some counties as well with Danielle Shunk, who not only has some of the northern counties, but also is here with us in Douglas County. Andrew Schill, who's in Sarpy County, going all the way down, and I believe that is 5A. On the map, he has the blue counties going all the way through Nebraska City and all the way down to the Kansas border. And also we have Aaron Wiesen, who goes to Colfax and to Dodge County. And then myself and Jordan are here in Douglas County solely.
Wow. Michelle, Lauren mentioned earlier, we're looking at caseloads of maybe 40 folks per public guardian. To put that in perspective, I think this is probably the time to walk us through this process from start to finish. We hear 40, and that's not really relevant until we understand the meaning, putting the people first, of course. So if you could just take us from start to finish, probably no typical case, but giving us an idea.
Sure. Statutorily, it is 40 as far as the cap on the service per person, which is actually pretty large number in regards to, I think, the best practice is between 20 and 30, but they thought that perhaps some of the population would be those who were in facilities who would perhaps take a little less travel time and those types of issues. And I know Senator Coash didn't have a lot of data when they began to take a look at what the need is, but that is our cap. Initially, someone who might be potentially incapacitated might be in the hospital or a nursing home, or we've also had calls from individuals who are homeless vets, social workers who are working. So there needs to be a petition filed that indicates that the person is incapacitated and there is no one else available to assist, friend, family, church member, co-worker, whatever, in order to step in and serve as the person's guardian or conservator to help make decisions for them. And so the petition is initially filed by an attorney, and then we are nominated if we are the last resort. And as Linda indicated, there is then the potential for a court visitor. In all Office of Public Guardian, there's a requirement that there be a court visitor who would go out as an independent investigator to just provide information back to the court. They don't make the decisions, but they provide the information. And that's done within 60 days of the time the petition is filed, to talk with and visit with the potentially incapacitated person, to talk with providers who know them, to talk with any family members, neighbors, etc., so that they can begin to know more about the individual and provide that to the judge. At that time, if there is no one available and the person is determined to be incapacitated, then the judge can appoint the Office of Public Guardian.
Okay, and Michelle, when you're explaining this, because it is new for the state, and you explain it in such a way that you just did here, what tends to be the most commonly asked question after you've walked somebody through? What's kind of top of mind there that they want to know?
Probably one of the main things is, why doesn't the Office of Public Guardian file the petition? I mean, if there's someone that's needed there and there's no one to step up for that individual, why doesn't the office file petitions? And what we try to explain is that the Office of Public Guardian is a state entity, and we don't want that type of potential conflict of interest where the same entity is filing for someone to lose their civil rights, to have decision made for them, for us to step in and be appointed as that person, and then we take over all decision making in regards to their finances, their medical history, etc. You really do want to have the protection of having a separate, independent determinant in regards to who files the petition versus who may later on be the individual, especially a state entity that serves. So we don't file the petitions, but we do come in and then have the potential of being nominated as a public guardian.
Okay, that makes sense. Lauren, where are you public guardians now in this process? You know, it's been almost a year. So what's your day-to-day like right now then?
So before, I would say yesterday, we actually have been going out into the communities from Scotts Bluff all the way to Douglas County and meeting with service providers all across Nebraska in all formats. So that could mean individuals who work with developmental disabilities, but the Alzheimer's Association. We've worked with individuals who help with brain traumas. We've worked with the mental health population in Region 6 here in Douglas County. So we're trying to get out and network to individuals to let them know about our office, but also to try to partner with them and to bridge those gaps of communication. However, yesterday we just started our first pilot case. And so we're in the throes of understanding what that looks like here and across Nebraska.
Yeah, so I'm guessing, it's just a hunch, that your public guardians are all about as passionate on this topic
correct.
as Lauren is. And so when we talk about that cap of 40, I mean, it's going to have to be something that the 12 of you have thought about, right? In terms of, we're going to hit this brink and then that phone call is going to come in. Have you guys talked about that at all, Lauren, in terms of just maxing out and then what happens to the people who are going to be needing your services, right? Can't help everyone the way you want to.
I definitely think that it is a concern that we have. In some ways, it's a step in the positive direction because nobody was there previously to this. So as we take a really thoughtful step in where we're going in terms of Nebraska, I think that we are doing the right thing initially for those first 40. But yes, it is a concern, and part of why we are really focused on trying to find volunteers who would want to be a successor guardian.
Okay, that's a great segue. So people watching want to help in some way, shape, or form, maybe as a volunteer. What's the first phone call they make? And maybe, Linda, this is a question for you in terms of, you know, who do they call and what can they expect after that?
Well, there are a number of ways to get involved and a number of places in the process to get involved. And up front, again, the court visitor piece is a volunteer situation. So if there are individuals who might be interested in becoming court visitors, I'm the contact for that. So that would be a good place to start for that one. The volunteer or the successor guardian piece, that's, since we just started yesterday, that's a little premature in how some of that might roll out. But successor guardians are not just needed for public guardians. There are lots of private guardians out there who are, you know, right there at the edge of being unable to serve. And so hoping to link up with, as we link up with private guardians, that's recruiting successor guardians, I think is going to be an issue that we're going to need to address for both our office and for the private sector. So we are working at creating some type of an entity. We don't know what to call it yet, whether it's going to be an association or a network, but a network of those private guardians for communication and education purposes and staying in the links so that we're around to provide the supports that we can through all of the information and all of the background that our associate public guardians have to share, not just with their wards and protected persons, but with those private guardians and their wards and protected persons. And then how do we keep building in new learning and new information that might be useful? So figuring out what that entity is going to look like down the road is another place where people will definitely be looking for the public to become involved there also. And so stay tuned and we'll figure out how to get you hooked up with that piece of the puzzle at this point.
I can see why she was lured.
Yes.
I'm tired just listening to her, right?
She's
and all the
done
things
a
that she
tremendous
has. That
job,
she has
just
to
like
do.
everyone
It's
in
an
our
exciting time
You can
in,
tell. Yeah.
in this, yes. I'm
Yeah.
really excited about who we are and who we're going to become. So,
Most importantly, it is about serving the vulnerable adults in our midst and those who just have no voice. And so being able to build the supports for both those individuals who are already doing the hard work as private guardians and conservators, provide them support, information, education, but also then the direct service of those who have no one else to speak for them or to serve them, and that's through the direct services being associate public guardians. So we hope to provide those hubs of information and support all across the state.
I have to ask Michelle, and we have 1 minute.
Yes.
What's your advice for those people who are still in a position to find folks who can represent them? Just in a minute.
Well, I would say that for all of us, the most important thing to do when we're still capable is to provide documentation in regards to advance directives, because whoever takes on your care, we want to take on the care of who you would have been in your best self. And we don't know that unless we have that documentation. So that would be important for all of us.
Outstanding, thank you. We want to put up a graphic with some information in case folks, and I'm sure they do, will want to know more. This is, and we've been talking about, the Nebraska Office of Public Guardian. To learn more, supremecort.nebraska.gov. Michelle, Linda, Lauren, thank you all very much for being here. We wish you well moving forward.
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
You bet. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information can be found at unotv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours, or email us at considerthis@tvmail.unomaha.edu.